Now the latest on Tropical Storm Beta. What has changed since yesterday afternoon? The forecast intensity has decreased slightly. The tropical storm warnings remain in effect, but the hurricane watches have been dropped. That occurred at 4 o'clock this morning. Minor to moderate coastal flooding is ongoing. The highest tide looks to be tonight and Monday, so that's when we're going to see probably some more widespread moderate coastal flooding. There's still a heavy rain and flood threat, although the forecast rain amounts have been are very uncertain still and have been trimmed just slightly, but we do have still the ingredients for some locally very heavy rain and flooding. Here's a look at the latest forecast track. You can see still at 60 mile per hour intensity. Forecast to maintain that intensity. Motion right now west-northwest at just 3 miles per hour, so still moving very slowly, but it is moving now. And you can see the track has been shifted ever so slightly further north compared to yesterday and just a little bit farther inland. I also want you to take note of that orange area there. That indicates the area of tropical storm force winds, a very large area to the north of the center. And that's really what's driving a lot of our heavy surf and high tides. That very large swath of tropical storm force winds on the north side. Latest satellite imagery showing, again, most of the thunderstorms east of the center, but there are some storms that have developed around the center this morning. Basically what we're looking at here is the infrared satellite image. So these darker reds here indicate thunderstorms developing close to, but on the north side of the center. And really not expected to intensify at this point as it creeps toward the Texas coast. Probably maintain its current intensity there as a strong tropical storm. Here's more of a close-up view of the cone and the track, along with some labeling there showing you the forecast wind speeds and the storm motion, as well as the timeline. So you can see getting very close to landfall Monday evening as a strong tropical storm likely with 60 mile per hour winds moving northwest at about 5 miles per hour at that time. And then it's forecast to make it perhaps just inland and then curl back toward the northeast. Look at these storm motions anywhere in the order of 3 to 5 mile per hour as they're passing by the greater Houston area. And then continuing on, maybe just slightly accelerating, but still only about 5 to 10 mile per hour motion as we get to Wednesday and Thursday. Here's a look at the radar from about half an hour ago. You can actually see the swirl there from Tropical Storm Beta offshore. We're also getting a band of rain pivoting into our area from the east. And this initial band, the rain shouldn't be particularly heavy because there is some dry air in the environment. We do think there is potential for some heavier bands, mainly Monday through Wednesday morning. So that's our greatest concern for flash flooding type rains. But we are expected to see some rain from Beta from this outer band before very long. Looking at the forecast for the Gulf of Mexico for winds and seas, the two time periods here are Sunday morning, basically now, and then Monday morning on the right-hand column. Winds are in the top row, and you can see, again, this large area of tropical storm force winds sort of shaded in orange there, and then high-end tropical storm in the pink. And you can see how that whole pattern is shifting west as the storm tracks west. And so you're going to see the higher winds reach the coastline tonight and tomorrow morning. Already some gusty winds out there now, but up into tropical storm force strength tomorrow morning. Likewise, the seas, we're getting some heavy surf now, some high surf, but the highest seas and a lot of wave energy is going to follow the storm as well, and you can see that also pushes onto shore. So just to kind of pull it all together, tonight's tide will be about a foot or more higher than the tides we're seeing now, plus we'll have added high surf on top of that. So probably our most significant coastal flooding is going to be tonight and tomorrow. Wind timing, this hasn't changed a lot, and it fits in with what we just said a moment ago. A bit hard to see here, but you can see the winds coming into the coastal areas tonight, maybe inland during the day, the morning or day tomorrow. And there's your tropical storm force wind probabilities, very high now for our whole forecast area. The highest probabilities being between the bays, between Galveston and Matagorda Bay, but probably most of our coastline are going to see tropical storm force winds. Looking at the higher end tropical storm force winds, that area is really maximum between sort of down toward Matagorda Bay and a bit further north, maybe up into Brazoria County coastal. A little bit lower probabilities on the far upper Texas coast and farther south. But as that track has just edged further north, that's also taken this axis of higher probabilities with it further north. So again, it's really our forecast area between the bays down to Matagorda Bay that looks to have the highest chance of high-end tropical storm force winds. And then those probabilities drop off as you get inland. Looking at the forecast and current tide levels, Galveston Bay entrance, we are, as expected, running up between 4 and 5 feet right now above mean lower low water. But look at that next high tide cycle tonight. On the time label, it's Monday 0 to Monday 12 Greenwich. And so that's basically from early this evening, late this afternoon through tomorrow morning. And you can see those values there. In the mean, in this surge model, up around 5.5 feet above mean lower low water, but potentially even above 6 feet, as we've been talking about the last few days. And then, so that's the upper right relative to this mean lower low water mark, which many EMs are used to using. When you compare that to mean higher high water, we're getting solidly close to that 4-foot peak tonight. So that's basically 4 foot of water above the high tide line, the vegetation line, and maybe even above 4 feet. Freeport, similar story. The highest of the high tides looks to be as we get toward late afternoon and into tomorrow morning. A good solid foot to 1.5 feet higher than what we're seeing right now. So that's going to be our high tide of most concern. That's going to be tonight and tomorrow morning. Notice on all these charts, the high tides fall off with time. We think that's probably falling off more rapidly than we'll actually see. So keep that in mind. We'll have high water certainly into probably, we still think, midweek in these areas. Matagorda Bay entrance, actually not quite as high as farther north, which is a little unusual when the tropical system is tracking down that way. But given the track farther north and that swath of very high winds north of the center, it's really more the north, Galveston Bay, Brazoria on north, that's getting the highest of the high tides. But even down here near Matagorda Bay, we're seeing mean water levels up above 4 feet mean lower low water and around 3 feet above mean higher high water. That's similar to what we saw with Hannah. And on top of that, keep in mind we're getting the high surf. So we're going to see a lot of beach erosion at all the Gulf-facing beaches. No matter what the mean level is, it's going to add effectively on to that. Eagle Point, Galveston Bay, Still seeing those high values being forecast. Right now running up around 4 feet. That's typically going to give us some minor coastal flooding. But look at the one tonight and tomorrow morning. That's up around 5 feet. And the gray area, again, represents some error bar. So potentially even higher than 5 feet above mean lower low water. And again, that's a good foot to a foot and a half above what we're seeing now. And then you can look at the same data relative to mean higher high water, peaking up around 4 feet. Pier 21, just a little different part of Galveston Bay on the bay side of the island there. Again, same story. We're already at levels that typically give us minor to locally moderate coastal flooding, and tonight's tide is going to be a good foot above or more what we're seeing now. So moderate coastal flooding still looks like a pretty solid bet for tonight and tomorrow. And then a slow decline from there, slower than shown on these charts. This is kind of a big picture view showing really how widespread the coastal flooding is as you go along the coast. Generally 2 to 4 feet in our area, but as we've just seen, really 3 to 4 feet plus for certainly our northern coastline. And those high surf values extend all the way up across to Louisiana. So it's a widespread coastal flood event, and we're seeing some of the higher values right in our area around Galveston Bay. And because of this, there is a storm surge warning in effect, of course, for all these areas, even over across to Louisiana. Rainfall amount, anytime we have a slow-moving tropical system, we need to be concerned about locally heavy rain. You can see the latest forecast from the Weather Prediction Center showing the potential for 10 to 15 inches of rain along the coast. Recall yesterday this was 15 to 20 inches, so the amounts have been shaded back some. And then it drops off further inland, 6 to 10 inches across Houston, and then perhaps 4 to 6 as you get farther north beyond that. But these amounts, as I said earlier, are uncertain. They could certainly be locally higher, and they may be trimmed back as well. Even though we have a slow-moving tropical system, there's still some dry air in the environment, and so that's making this a very complicated precipitation forecast. But bottom line, we still have that potential for flash flooding. Anytime we have a slow-moving tropical system, there's likely to be a band of very high amounts. As I said earlier, the period of greatest concern for this hazard is going to be Monday through Wednesday morning. And because of that rainfall, you can see the Weather Prediction Center is highlighting the areas in red there as having a moderate risk of flash flooding, and the yellow a slight, and then marginal as you go even well inland when you consider the event as a whole over the next 3 days. And how that breaks down day by day. Now through Monday morning, there is a small area of slight risk right along the coast between Galveston and Matagorda Bay. When you look at Monday and Monday night, you can see that's, again, kind of in the heart of the time of concern with that large moderate risk area. And then that continues into Wednesday morning. So again, Monday and Tuesday into Wednesday morning are our periods of greatest concern for heavier rain. Tornado potential. We do have a marginal risk for tornadoes, meaning an isolated tornado is possible, or a tornado or two, with the bands as they come in. And you can see there's even a small marginal risk for today and more likely tonight from Freeport on north up along the coast. And then during the day tomorrow, you can see all our coastal counties and even one row inland are in that marginal risk of tornadoes. So storm surge and flooding rains are going to be probably the main threats here. Some high-end tropical storm force winds possible sort of in the middle part of our area. and tornadoes are another hazard, but probably less of a concern than the others. Summing up, minor to moderate coastal flooding occurring now, even higher tides expected tonight and early Monday. Confidence is, as I've said all along, been pretty high on the tidal threat, and we are seeing that playing out right now. At these levels, some main roads are flooded, and also most low-lying areas. And then heavy rain and flash flooding is going to be a concern as well, especially when combined with the high tides pushing up into the tidal tributaries. Greatest risk looks to be along the Texas and Louisiana coasts. There is a flash flood watch in effect, although the amounts are uncertain and track dependent. Potential exists for 10 to 15 inches of rain near the coast and possibly locally higher. And we'll be looking more at that rainfall forecast as we go through the day. Gusty winds expected to tropical storm force along our entire coastline, with the highest winds near and just right of where that center makes landfall, most likely near or a little bit north of Matagorda Bay, the way it looks now. And confidence is fairly high, of course, for the coastal flooding. We're seeing it, and the forecast does seem to be verifying as expected. There is a lower confidence in the track. It's continually shifting a little bit north and a little bit west, and likewise lower confidence in the actual rainfall forecast, but certainly there is potential sort of medium confidence of that flash flood threat, and therefore those flash flood watches have been issued. The next briefing will be this afternoon at 4:30.